Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fifth day of the Western Indian Ocean Regional Benthic Imagery Workshop. You made it. This last day is going to be a little bit more interactive for you. While in the past days you have been watching two lectures and asking any questions, this time you will be able to talk directly with all of the presenters and sort of discuss different challenges related to imagery and where you can go from there. So right now we'll just explain to you how the day will flow. So first of all, between now and 9:15 to 9:30, we will be explaining what the different breakout rooms you will be joining later on. So the way it's going to work is we're going to have different breakout rooms, and in each breakout room you will be discussing different topics. So the room that we are currently at, this is the main room one, as you can see on the slide there. So everyone who chooses to stay on this room will be discussing best practices for collecting imagery data as well as for habitat classification. So this room is going to be led by Anthony Bernard and Charles von der Medden. And then if you want to join room 2, this will be dealing with challenges with imagery data. For example, if you have a backlog of videos and images, which are very time consuming to analyze, what do you do, for example, in this case? There will be more talks about automated analysis and other options to sort of semi-automate maybe the analysis of your data that you have. So this one is going to be led by Luther Adams. Then we have the breakout room number 3, and I will explain very shortly how you will be able to join those breakout rooms. So breakout room number 3 deals with infrastructure and collaborations. So for example, you might be wanting to discuss the feasibility of the drop camera system for exploring shallow water marine environments, for example, or how to build collaborations, which will allow you to know more than, which will allow you to do more multidisciplinary work. So this room is going to be led by Laureen Snyders, as well as Mark Worship and Ahmed Najim. And then breakout room number 4. So this one essentially will be one that doesn't have a specific subject. It's going to be an interactive discussion between led by Tufik Samai and other presenters that are not in the other rooms. So if you don't have any particular interest for the other subjects discussed in the other rooms, you're very welcome to join breakout room number 4, where there will be a more general discussion in relation to the workshop. So now how to join the breakout rooms. I think in order to be able to join the breakout rooms, you will be able to see on the bottom of your screen, there will be the breakout rooms will be visible. I can't see it on my screen, but I'm guessing maybe that's because I'm a panelist. Can someone maybe?
I haven't opened the rooms yet.
Okay.
Paris, but I can do when you're ready.
Okay, maybe let's, okay, I'll let you know, maybe let's just go through the other things that I haven't mentioned. For those speaking in French, just be aware that in every room there's going to be a French interpreter, like it was for all the lectures that we have been doing. And then like Brian will soon open the option to join the breakout rooms, but in case you're having difficulties accessing any of the breakout rooms, then you can write it on the chat and we'll help you sort of join the breakout room that you want to. And as a reminder, while you're getting set up in your breakout rooms, then there will be a link circulated. Please do fill this in. This is an evaluation form of the workshop, and it will really help the workshop organizers to see what went well, what didn't work that much, and that will help for future conferences. So before we open the breakout rooms, very briefly, how it's going to run today. So between now and 9:30, everyone will sort of choose the breakout room, sort of get set and ready. Then between 9:30 to 10:30, so for about an hour, we will be discussing the subject on each breakout room with the presenters and the other lecturers. Between 10:30 and 11, there's going to be half an hour for a break. Between 11 and 12, we'll all reconvene back to the main room. So you will be using again the same link if you, for some reason, left the Zoom. And then we'll be summarizing what has been discussed during those rooms all together. And then there will be a closing talk by Tufik Samai and Tanya Haupt. Well, so they will be sort of summarizing the workshop. Yeah, and I think that's more or less it. So I think we're good to opening the breakout rooms, unless I might have forgotten something, which now is the time to let me know, I guess, Ryan or Tanya. But if not, I think we can open the breakout rooms and explain how people can join them. Does that sound okay? So now you will be able to see on the bottom of your screen, next to the live transcript, there will be these 4 squares, which are the breakout rooms. So if you, for example, click on them, then you see that you are able to sort of choose the room that you want to. So you have room number 2, 3, and 4. And of course, if you want to know about the best practices manual for habitat classification, you don't have to choose anything. You just stay where you are, because this is going to be the room where we'll be discussing that. There is a poll that you're very welcome to complete now. And don't forget, if you're having trouble accessing any of the rooms, which you should, most of you should be fine, but if for any reason you have any issues, just write on the chat, and then we'll be able to assist you. If you do that, then you just write the room that you want to join. See, most of you are able to join rooms, which is great. See, there is an enormous amount of people on this room, which might be on purpose, but if any of you is struggling, don't be shy asking us how to join other rooms. If that's where you want to be, don't pay attention to what I'm saying. I guess for those of you who are here and you're planning on stay here, I'm just going to put on the chat the link to the workshop evaluation form, which, because we have time between now and 9:30, you're more than welcome to complete it now. It would really help the workshop organizers. Thank you. Said, no, you're not too late. The only reason there is a bit of silence here is because until now at 9:30, with everyone is trying to find a breakout room. So if you want to choose a breakout room, so each room will be talking about different topics. So if you're interested in best practice manual for habitat classification, you just say here. But if you want to choose any of the other rooms, then there is the breakout room button at the bottom, which and then once you click on it, you are able to choose the room you want to join. And if you have any issues, let us know.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to confirm, like, are there like points that each room has, like, apart from just best practice manual, are there like other small tidbits that we can know so that we can make a decisive decision? Because I'm
yes, absolutely.
between...
This is more like a guideline of more or less what can be discussed. It's everyone can sort of like raise issues related to that. Did you have anything specific in mind, you mean? Or because if there is something general yet that you don't think fits in any of room 1, 2, and 3, then room 4 maybe a good spot for you if it's something completely unrelated but related to imagery, of course.
Okay, I think I'll go with room 4. Thank you very much for your clarification. Okay.
Something that I have forgotten to mention for everyone in this room, and I will sort of message the other facilitators in the other rooms. So if at some point you want to swap rooms because you're interested in more than one, you're more than welcome to go to different rooms. So you don't have to stay for the whole of the hour in one room if you do not want to. So you're free to move around between rooms if you want to join other discussions as well. Just gonna copy and paste the link to the workshop evaluation. If you haven't, I think I just sent it to Anthony. Send it to everyone now. If you haven't done it, please complete it now. It will be most useful. And I think we're more or less ready to start the session sort of slowly, getting to know each other. So I think, we can start the session with Anthony and Charles. So I don't know how this is going to work out with the spotlights and everything, but I guess, can I remove it? Yeah, okay. So I'll leave Ant to lead the session now.
Well, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm assuming, eh?
Hi there. Yep.
How's it? Yeah, thanks for joining us today. So I've put together a short little presentation, a couple of slides, just to get us started and get us going with this discussion. So I'll share my screen. Let me see how best to do that. Screen two, let's try that out. Is that the correct screen or is it not the correct screen?
The other one and
the one.
not, yeah.
Sorry, I did the wrong thing.
Swap. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, better.
There we go. Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, thanks everyone. So the purpose of this discussion is to basically provide a platform to discuss some of the concepts around best practices and the feasibility of best practices with imagery-based benthic research within the WIO and within your countries. And then obviously also we can address any other questions kind of related to this topic that you might have. No, I'll just go slowly to give translation the time. This is the time needed. So basically what I thought we could do to start was if you have any specific questions that you would, or topics that you would like us to deal with, can you put them into the chat box? And then we can monitor that and we can talk about that once I get to the end of this little presentation. And then also the whole point of this is for it to be a discussion. So if you have anything to say, or if you would like to contribute in any way, stop me, stop us, and also raise your hand, and you can jump in and add your thoughts and your views and stuff. So yeah, so don't feel like you have to wait for us to stop to give you opportunity. If you're keen to chat, raise your hands. Just as a note for the people controlling this, I can't actually see the chat box when I'm in presenter view or the hands being raised. So maybe if Charles or Liesel, if you could control that and just stop me when somebody wants to say something.
Sure. I'll keep a lookout.
Great, thanks. Okay, so best practices encompass multiple things, and they can be viewed from, I guess, from a variety of different scales. Like at a local scale or at a scale that's relevant to you, you basically want to ensure that the work you're doing has sufficient scientific rigor. And we've covered a lot of that content during the workshop so far. And this includes whether or not your method is scientifically robust, your sampling method, and considers aspects of the strengths and weaknesses of that of the sampling method. Then, of course, the way you go about designing your research project and collecting your data and the sample collection. And then importantly, how you go with imagery data. Another important part is how you go about getting the biodiversity data that you observe in the image out. So the sample processing and whether or not the approaches you use are the best practices. And then lastly, how you manage your data, whether or not you're managing it in a way that will ensure that it's secure and reusable in the future. But then something else to consider is what about the broader value of your investment, of your work? And within this, you need to consider, so how comparable is your method with other local, national, regional, or global programs. Can the data that you're collecting within your study sites contribute to a larger national data set? And it's important to remember here that different sampling methods are able to sample different components of the ecosystems efficiencies. And if you compare, and basically if there's no standardization or if there's limited standardization in the methods used by different people within your country or within a region, then the scope to combine data sets from those different people and different programs is very limited. And this in turn limits your ability to merge all the data and look at regional scale patterns and reduces the overall value of the data. And then the other thing to consider is your data fair. And basically FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Findable means, can somebody else find your data? Is your data out there for other people to find? Other people or machines, so for automated finding of the data. And then linked to this is it accessible? So if a person can find your data, can they then access it? Or are there all sorts of hoops they've got to jump through, or is it restricted? Interoperable refers to, touches on the comparability of the data. So can the data be merged into bigger data sets? But it also talks to the language used with your metadata and the data management. So can the data sets be merged? Are there common names for common variables and that type of thing? And then reusable links to the data management as well, and the quality of the metadata. So is all the information provided that will enable somebody else to just look at the data set and understand fully what you did and how that can be used in the bigger picture, in the bigger analysis. If I'm going too fast, just let me know. Okay, so with all the current threats to biodiversity and the collapse of resources and important ecosystems, there's a growing recognition that sustained monitoring data are needed to report on the status of biodiversity from local to global scales. And then within this, you want to be able to determine how the local trends are differing to the global scale background. So for example, the relevance would be like, is your country's biodiversity management effective? Are you doing better than the normal or worse? And then this will allow you to determine what to do in the future to improve biodiversity management. And then this sustained monitoring data are required by many national biodiversity management plans, but also international agreements such as the CBD, IT targets, and the Sustainable Development Goals. And there's a growing drive from international institutions to establish coordinated and sustained monitoring programs. Within this, the Global Ocean Observing System has been one of the leaders pushing sustainable observing. Historically, the GOOS has focused on the physics and biogeochemistry monitoring, but they've recently moved over to the biological components of marine ecosystems. And they're driving the collection of data for essential ocean variables and the establishment of global observing programs. And basically an essential ocean variable, so basically an essential ocean variable focuses on the status of the status and change of ecosystem components and then also the habitats. And for an essential ocean variable or EOV to be selected, it needs to have high impact and high feasibility. The impact is considered, so is the EOV relevant for solving science questions? Does it address societal needs? And can it contribute towards improved resource management? And then the feasibility side of the EOV, is the EOV itself scientifically credible? So does it produce trends that are robust? Is the collection of the EOV technically practical? So what is the feasibility of rolling out a global program of collecting data for this EOV? And then obviously also linked to this is it cost effective? within the EOVs, there's two main types. They consider the ecosystem components and then the habitats. So your ecosystem components could be the plankton, the benthic invertebrates, the fish or the mammals, for example. And then the habitats could be the coral reefs, the seagrass, and the mangroves, so for example. But then obviously benthic habitats would fit within that. Obviously, this all seems quite ambitious. And the establishment the establishment of the global observing networks and the collection of EOV data is ambitious for many reasons. So in many instances, it's not feasible for one group to collect all the required data at the scales required. So at a local scale, you can do it yourself, but as soon as you start getting to national, regional, global scales, there's collaboration is required and coordination amongst researchers. You then also obviously require a minimum level of standardization amongst all the different collaborators in terms of the methods they use and then how they go about sampling and analyzing their data. And then obviously the data needs to be fair, so findable, accessible, interoperable, and I can't remember what the last one was, repeatable, I think. Anyway, and then a last important point is the data needs to be made available at relevant times. So often researchers will sit on data for years and years and years, holding on, waiting until they publish a paper in a scientific journal before they make it relevant. I mean, before they make it available or publish it open access. But ideally, this data needs to be made available within a time frame that's relevant to management and reporting. While this is obviously all very ambitious, there are numerous examples of successful global programs involving large collaborative efforts amongst different researchers and different organizations. So the Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network is an example, and that's linked in with the Coral Reef EOV. And then the Global Alliance of Continuous Plankton Recorders is another one, and that's linked in with the plankton and zooplankton EOVs now. So there are examples. Further, there's examples within the Ocean Best Practice System. That's basically their aim is to provide agreed and broadly adopted methods across ocean research operations and applications. And within the Ocean Best Practice System, you can find many really good protocols and guidelines for carrying out research using specific methods. Another really excellent initiative was the Australian Marine Biodiversity Hub Marine Sampling Field Manuals, and they produced numerous manuals that we rely on quite heavily for our work. But their goal was to try and coordinate the research within Australia so that the data collected by different people can be used to address national scale monitoring objectives. And then just basically to think a little bit about what should be included in a best practice guideline. And these are just some ideas off the top of my head and looking at some of the examples. So you obviously need to consider the equipment specifications, the sampling specifications, the scope of the data, the field procedures, so how you go about collecting the data. And when I mentioned scope of the data, basically what I meant is what can the data be used for? In certain instances, some data may not be appropriate to address fisheries questions or address questions related to the density of organisms. So you need to understand the data. And then so the field procedures, the sample processing procedures. So how do you go about getting the biodiversity data from your samples? Then you want to include how you curate the data and how you implement the quality control. Sorry, my dogs are going a little bit crazy. And then the data management policy. Also, you can consider how method fits within the EOV framework and what you might need to provide data to support the EOVs. And then ideally, you'd also like to provide a workflow for data publication because you're relying on the scientists to publish their data to fit within global programs. You want to make it as streamlined and as easy as possible to do this. So providing a workflow that makes it efficient will be good. And then one of the critical requirements for it to become a global network is that the protocol and the best practices need to be accepted by the broader research community. So without that acceptance and without that, and I say accepted and adopted, and so basically used. Without that, you'll basically be working in isolation. I thought I'd provide an example with the BRUVs and stereo BRUVs, so the baited remote underwater video cameras. And so basically, there's a very large global network of people using baited cameras to conduct research on fishes. This example, each dot here is a sample site that was surveyed for the Global Finprint project, which aimed to assess the population status of elasmobrang and rays. And you can see it's got a really big global footprint. Global Archive is another, it also demonstrates the extent of the BRUVs data sets around the world. And then this is just where we've done BRUVs research, where we've either conducted BRUVs research or where we have provided support, so technical support to assist other people doing BRUVs research within our region, so within Southern Africa and along the east coast of Africa and the Western Indian Ocean islands. So there is a large global network within the BRUVs community, and there's been demonstrated intent or demonstrated scope for coordination amongst the different partners. The one thing that is important to bear in mind is that BRUVs data can be influenced by methodological biases. So you do kind of require standards to be in place, but there are standards in place now. And there is a relatively good uptake of those standards by different researchers around the world. Considering the data management, a lot of this is underway. So work has been undertaken at local scales. So we're doing quite a bit of work with it at SIRE, but then also within the Global Archive project. And that is happening. So within the near future, there will be all the required workflows to manage your local data sets, but also allow you to publish the data onto global repositories. And then in terms of considering the EOV requirements, so impact, are BRUVs data relevant for solving science questions, addressing societal needs, and contributing towards improved resource management? And there's been a large amount of publications recently demonstrating using BRUVs to address all these questions. So from that side, the impact side is there. And then in terms of feasibility, the scientific credibility, there's been a lot of research put into optimizing the BRUVs method and understanding the data, and it is viewed as scientifically credible. There are limitations with what you can do with the data, and as long as you keep that in mind, then there is credibility. Is it technically practical and cost effective? It can be very cost effective, and it can be very easy to implement with technological advances and the availability of cameras and underwater cameras. It's very easy to implement BRUV surveys. So it is a method that can be rolled out at global scales. So we're thinking again about it. The main aspects where we need to advance the BRUVs networks is the ensuring that there is the coordination and trying to get more people to adopt the standards where they are doing BRUVs research, and then furthering the data management. And once this is all done, then the global program would be there and in place. And then the question is, what about Benthic Imagery surveys? And to the best of our knowledge, there hasn't been much. There's been lots of local scale work optimizing Benthic Imagery research protocols, but the global coordination might not be there, especially in the deeper waters. So I think good examples would be the coral reef monitoring network. That's very well coordinated and does rely on Benthic Imagery surveys. But then the question is more about how to link in with the deeper water surveys and the more temperate environments. And I don't know if Charles, you would like to maybe chat a little bit more about this here.
Yeah, and I can do. Do you want me to do that now as we go through?
Yes, yeah, I think so, if possible.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I'm just going to go for it from here. I was just taking what Ant had in one of the previous slides and some of these points, and just thinking about them in terms of specifically in terms of benthic imagery. So the type of work that I do with drop cameras and so forth. And I think the gist here is I was trying to sort of come down to what is the core, the most important things, because as Ant says, the feasibility aspect of this is really important, especially, I mean, anywhere, but especially in our region. And so if you don't have something that is, you can have great like criteria and everything, but if it's not actually going to be feasible for people to hold to that and to adopt it, then that's kind of what I partly worry about. And so the things in red there, particularly, the actual sampling, sample processing procedures, and the quality control of that comes down to, perhaps using things like Katami and Gossip, which have been spoken about, to get that at least at a higher level, standardized and interoperable. So that's a really key thing. Whereas, things that speak to the exact equipment specifications of the exact type of camera and the exact type of setup that you're using are much more general, and it can be, anyone using some form of downward facing or scaled image is fine, as long as you're doing some of the core things. So that's sample processing, and as Anne said, the data curation and the quality control of that. But I'm not aware of what at the moment what those standards would be, other than like holding to things like Katami and Gossip and so forth. And so this may be the third point there in red, may be kind of something that inherently happens anyway, but I think part of this is just even to know, to have some kind of standard way of curating the actual field and processing methods, that they are as accessible as the data, right? So it's very important to have your fair criteria, but I think, I don't know if it's always necessarily the case that field methodology and processing methodology gets recorded perhaps to the same extent. So that was just a point that I wanted to raise, and maybe I just don't know enough about how the overall data curation happens. So those 3 points in red there are really the things that kind of worry me most, but I think that the others are very, I suppose, very much the same as what would happen in any other context like BRUVs or any of the others. So that's just my take. Some of the things that would be most important for specifically for benthic, or for epifauna and so forth. That's what I mean by benthic. Cool.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. So basically the other thoughts, so building on from what Charles was saying, was like, so with the example of the fish, so I've exited the presenter mode just so I can see what's going on better. The fish obviously aren't sessile, so they move around a lot, and the sampling methods for fish are probably more prone to methodological biases, which made me wonder whether or not there's greater flexibility in the sampling methods for the benthic invertebrates, so the sessile ones in particular. If that's the case, then there's probably it's probably much easier to develop standards as you're less reliant on the sampling method. So it's easier to adopt broad standards. And then like other thoughts I had regarding the benthic imagery is, how does the remote benthic imagery align with what's collected by the scuba divers on the coral reefs, for example? Because you've already got these really well-established monitoring programs in the shallow coral reef, the shallow coral seas, where there will be a degree, I'm not completely familiar with what they do, but I'm assuming that they will be using camera and quadrat surveys to collect data in certain instances. And then it's trying to think of how best can we align work with the remote sampling techniques to produce comparable data sets with their work to describe habitats or to describe trends in variables. Yeah, so I don't know if now you guys would like to, if there's anything that anyone's thinking about in terms of this, like in terms of specifically the standards and the protocols for your local scale research, in terms of potentially what would be the challenges for your, with the idea of starting to work towards the bigger objectives of national and regional and global level reporting for biodiversity. So it would be interesting to hear some of your guys' thoughts on this. If there's anybody.
If anyone wants to contribute, just unmute your microphone.
And just to get things going, maybe a little bit, C Grant has also raised a hand there. I just wondered, this can come in whenever, but I just wonder if we have any people in the well, from Paris down to, anyone in the group that knows the most about the coral seagrass surveys, because I don't know very much about exactly how those are done and how relevant it is to, if anyone's found or used them for other benthic work. That would be really useful to understand.
Maybe to start, also Grant could, I don't know if anyone wants to contribute to Charles's question.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it related to, did you say, Charles, if essentially we're using sort of methods that are being used in monitoring programs? Is that what you asked, or?
Yes, kind of. Because I'm not so familiar with like the GCRMN and those, I mean, just broadly familiar, but I just wondered, yeah, if those are directly applicable, like have people just applied those? I think a lot of it is, but I'm just, yeah, it can come in from whenever. It doesn't have to be like answered now. Just yeah, to know whether those, how closely they align, or how much success people have had with just picking or adopting those fairly directly for other types of surveys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to talk about what we are doing. Sort of, even the fact that we're sort of doing benthic transect surveys, sort of going continuous along the seafloor. I don't think it's necessarily sort of very common. So I'm not the best person to sort of say. Well, I think that the methods used in monitoring techniques are usually sometimes different. They have photo quadrats, or they might have point line intercept. So already you see there is a bit of a variation there. And I guess the point I want to make is it's always good to try and standardize things. And I think there are sort of protocols coming out for all the different steps, from data curation to how you collect the data, to how you analyze the data. I don't think we'll ever get to a point where everything is going to be done in the same way, just because of cost, because of how things have been done in the past. So I think it's good to try and standardize things. And maybe the FAIR sort of principles are good because they sort of showcase how we have done things and it's transparent. But I cannot see how we will all be doing exactly the same thing. There's so much variability in all of the steps. That's sort of my view.
No, absolutely. I agree that, I mean, yeah, you've got to come to some kind of higher level. So even if that higher level is just that the method and the protocols and everything that were used are recorded and the data is available, and you can actually make in meta analysis you can make decisions based on those.
I think within the benthic imagery, there's scope for that variability. Like, as long as there's like a base level of standardization, then the data is probably quite compatible, even if the methods are slightly different. So the quadrat size is different if it's an oblique image versus the downwards image. As long as there's some scaling to it or that type of stuff, then I reckon that there's the data would be highly comparable. Yeah, it's just yeah.
I see with those coral seagrass surveys that, I mean, they do take into account some variation of methods, so transect belts or quadrats. So it's just a matter of like having those in little compartments as well.
Saeed, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, but it's a little bit off of what you're discussing. First, also, I would like just to comment a little bit because, yeah, the decisions on the standard method of sampling will always depend on the resources in terms of finances and the equipments, and also the aim. So they will always differ. We won't have a standardized, but at least we can have protocols for each kind of sampling method that people will use. Now to my question is that, for most of us here students, and although we are doing benthic studies, like me particularly, I deal with in-fauna studies. So I was asking, and for other students that are here, like, is there a place where you can go, and because these images are there, the videos are recorded, is there like an open source where you can just go and practice on the identification now of this fauna? Because once you start to take on into the image identification, you need to have some expertise in it. And you can't just, because it's something that is expensive, time consuming, and you can't just go there like you're blank. So is there like a resource that you can get and practice as you go in so that you can use for future works and for students that are upcoming in the field?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll give a suggestion that maybe Charles and Paris can also contribute. I almost think that some of those, like some potentially Beagle, there's another thing called Squiddle or Squiddle 2 or something like that. And I've been on those websites and seen, yeah, I think, so I don't know exactly, but I think there might be. And I think looking into those online repositories and annotation data sets, there might be scope within those. The alternative would be to find people who are willing to assist you, because for example, we will have, and Charles will have images that have been previously annotated, and these you can use those as training, for example. I think within this there's a need for collaboration and cooperation in terms of people who need who are interested. I mean, but I'm not sure about the other guys' thoughts.
No, I agree, and I think, yeah, what you said is good, and yeah, certainly other people working in the field would probably be able to help, but yeah.
I mean, my 2 cents on that is I'm just sort of looking at Squiddle right now, and I'm sort of at the stage where I managed to see a data set that's already sort of like analyzed, actually from South Africa. The only thing I cannot find is, and still loading, is if they give also identifications of things so people can sort of start learning. So definitely, I think Squiddle, okay. I'm almost pretty sure that Beagle does it, but I haven't checked it, I have to admit. So Squiddle definitely allows you to see some of the data sets that are open. Of course, there might not be necessarily sort of environments that are suitable for you, but I think it's worth sort of checking it out. And then the other thing that that will be hopefully sort of available by the end of 2021, but that's going to be for the Atlantic, is the Smarter IT database, where they're going to have a lot of different images from different projects identified, and that's one example. But that's not available yet, I guess. And the other thing is, sometimes people in studies, they do also provide in the supplementary material information on things that have been identified, so whole sort of field ID guides in a way, and you know, like those can be really helpful. I'm guessing you were talking about IDs, unless I'm completely misunderstood. So that can help as well.
Saeed, do you want to, you would like to add to that?
No, thank you very much. It was really informative, and I've taken note of your suggestions.
Paris, did you find that? I was looking online now for the Swiddle website and I couldn't find it. So,
I have the Swiddle website. It's going to go straight to the Explore section.
Okay.
So, when I browse, I can see sort of different data sets. Some of them are open, some of them are not. You can see the images. You can see like literally the whole thing. I just cannot seem to find identifications yet, but maybe I'm slow or something.
Okay. Well, that's something for Saeed to look into, I guess. Grant, I don't know if you would like to ask or add.
Hey guys, yes, thanks for this. My question, also goes around the question of the data variability and working towards standardization, but it's probably more specific. I'm interested in discussing whether it would be possible to develop a standard for the number of images to process in different habitat types using our different camera platforms. Should we maybe think of including like species accumulation curves and power analysis in our SOPs when we write that up for our different habitats? Because I know some individuals that will process 30 benthic images per transect, where others will process 10. And we always be struggling with capacity. So to find the most efficient way to process our images would probably be the way forward. I don't know if this is possible or what you guys think about it.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge with browse as well. So it's I think you need to do enough basically to get the scientific rigor that you need in terms of being able to answer your questions and interpret your trends. And you will be able to figure that number out. Roughly, you'll be able to obviously figure it out quite accurately for a location and roughly for a habitat type, and if you're going to different locations, and looking at your species accumulation curves, looking at doing power analysis, doing those types of things. So that would all be really good steps. Whether or not that'll be broadly applicable to all data sets, to all locations where you're sampling, it might not really translate to that. I think obviously different habitats or different environments. So a disturbed environment will be more variable to a pristine environment or things along those lines, and you'll need more sampling to capture that variability. So the more variable an environment is, the more sampling you need to be able to have robust stats coming from that. So there's a bit of I think some idea of what's appropriate, but then also bearing in mind where you're working and the questions you're trying to address. You'll need to actually adapt those numbers. It's kind of my thoughts of it. I don't know what the others' ideas are on this. Okay. But it's definitely a worthwhile thing to do, and it would be really good to publish those types of things and get that type of information out there.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And I was just going to say that exactly for the reasons that you've just mentioned, and mainly that there will be probably a bit much variability from place to place and habitat to habitats beyond the general, a rocky habitat versus an unconsolidated habitat. But perhaps the way to have that is to at least have as part of the standard is to have that, or some estimate of that, as part of the protocol, so that when you look at someone's data, then you can actually tell, okay, well, do we accept this? Was this, what was the accumulation for that? And at least to have some idea of what actually happened during the sampling. But again, I suppose, ideally people would be doing that, some form of that in their own research for themselves, and just including that will go a long way to knowing how much or how to use the data and how much you can trust that data for certain purposes.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think when we sort of going on surveys, one of the first things we do once we get sort of like some of the first transits, because we sort of have a good idea of how long the transit should be, for example, which sort of relates to sampling effort. We sort of scan the data for different species / morphotypes, and then we see if more or less sort of like we're sort of reaching a flat species accumulation curve, and then if not, if it's still sort of like we keep seeing many new species, then we might want to consider sort of increasing the length of the transits. And I guess sometimes if your environment is very uniform, so for example, like in abyssal plains, which is like very deep environments, 5,000 meters deep or something, because you have very few species scattered over a large area, sometimes you even need a even bigger, sort of longer transit survey in order to be able to capture them. So every environment is unique. So I don't think you can definitely sort of put a number behind a habitat of how long your transit should be, or how wide your transit should be, and all these things.
Yeah. Another thing to consider is the research question, or what you're doing. So like for a long-term monitoring program, for example, you can work out exactly how many samples you should be, or how many images you should be analyzing per environment, to optimize your research approach, so that you don't collect too many or too few images throughout the duration of the long-term program. So you can be really efficient with a long-term monitoring program. If you're doing a baseline survey, on the other hand, you need to maybe take a precautionary principle and get more samples than required, because you're not going to be going back there, so you only have that one chance to do that survey. So yeah, there's a bit of a you basically just got to weigh it up, depending on the circumstances, the environment that you're working on, and what you're aiming to do.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. Yeah, probably that would probably be the case for us as well, where it's hard to get to the sites that we go to, so we'll try to collect as much as possible during every deployment. Thanks.
So can I just add, Grant? I still do think that obviously for like a national level work for a particular purpose like monitoring, it's like, obviously that's not to say that it wouldn't be a good idea to try and standardize within like that national project, so that you get some idea of what your sandy habitats are doing, what your rocky, and I think that's still worthwhile. It's just perhaps on the much broader scale, where, and especially as Paris says, where the objectives, like the study objectives, may be different, then it becomes much more difficult. But within a single type, and maybe at the national scale, it would be like well worthwhile to do that.
Matavika, are you unmuted now? I see you want to ask a question.
I think he's been having issues with his sound. There is a comment in the chat from Layla. Layla, I don't know if you just want to unmute and read it out, rather.
Yeah.
Hi, good day, everyone. So I just mentioned that within my master's study, I found that using the species accumulation curves that helped showed me that 30 images per site that was surveyed seemed to be a good enough fit for showing, that 30 images should be enough samples for each of the sites. And also in terms of assigning the amount of dots for each of my quadrats. So I definitely agree that species accumulation curves can be quite useful.
Yes. That's great. Thanks, Lila.
Thanks, guys.
I'm not sure if anybody else has any other questions that they would like to go over. be great to hear your views in terms of the benthic research that you do within your organizations or within your research projects. I guess something we could then start thinking about, and it's so it'll be great if more people can start talking and contribute. Otherwise, it might just be South African ideas coming through. So it'll be good to hear what's feasible from other regions of the WIO. But it'll be really great, and the output of this would be. Okay, wait, I see a question has come through from Baker. Are there some cheaper alternatives that can be used during survey, especially in island water bodies? Yeah, so in terms of cameras, there's all sorts of cheap options that you can buy, and if you're not doing scuba surveys, if you are trying to do, for example, drop camera surveys, a drop camera frame can be made really cost effectively, probably from materials that are locally available. It doesn't have to be a big, heavy engineering project. It can simply be a PVC frame with some weights on it, that is enough weights to get it down to the bottom. So looking into alternative drop camera designs, it could be quite good for that, and they're quite cheap. What work are you? Where? If you're wanting to ask the question and speak, Baker, you're welcome to. In terms of where are you based, and what is the project that you guys are busy with?
Hello, thank you. I don't know the audible.
I can hear you.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you very much. Right now I'm carrying out some research in some inland water body, and why I've asked that question is because when you look at, for example, the turbidity of the water, like inland water bodies, like this is a freshwater lake. It's not clear. So I think it needs maybe to use some alternative aspects, like when you are doing research or surveys. So that's why I asked that question.
All right. Yeah. No, it's just inland water body. Sorry, I saw island. I was focused on marine environments. Okay. Yeah. For inland water bodies and turbid waters, it can be very challenging. There's not much you can do. There was a really cool study published recently. I've forgotten what this thing is called now, but they basically had a clean. The camera system had a chamber in front of it that had clean water, and then a glass front, and that basically removed a lot of the turbidity, or made you be able to see the images much better. But that is quite a complicated piece of equipment. If it is turbid, then you're more than likely going to have to resort to more traditional sampling techniques, depending on what you're trying to survey. Is it the benthic environment that you're trying to survey, or is it the biota, like the mobile biota, like fishes and that type of stuff?
Benthic environment. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be quite challenging. I guess you could do grabs, could be one. You could also get the camera very close to the seafloor would be another idea. I'm not sure what the others think of this, but that could get you close enough to see what's going on down there. But you might also stir up quite a bit of turbidity if you're that close to the bottom. Otherwise, mapping with acoustics, but that all ends up quite expensive.
Okay, thank you very much, Bernard.
I'm not sure if Paris or anybody else has ideas for how to survey inland freshwater turbid environment.
I don't have any experience on that, I'm afraid, so I'm not really sure. It sounds challenging just because of the whole sort of sediment suspension that might be possible, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't done any inland sampling, but I sampled close to a river outflow once, and it was quite turbid there. And we're sampling with an oblique facing camera, and I found that it was hard to see through the turbidity, but when the camera faced, like it was a bit closer to the bottom, I could actually see the sea floor. So I don't know if it might help having it closer to the bottom. You obviously see less, but your resolution will be higher, but your width or the amount of stuff you can see in your images will be less.
I think that is probably the a solution, is you get your camera really close to the sea floor and you leave it down there for a while for whatever. When your camera lands, it's probably going to stir up a bit of sediment. So you leave it down there for a while for the sediment to settle, and then hope that there's enough light to see what's going on. And then also, obviously, if you've got lights on your camera system, don't have them facing the same direction as the camera or very close to the camera. Have them coming in from angles. So like if your camera is in the center, have the light coming in from an angle so that there's less reflection of the particles in the water column. And that might also help with a bit of that, with a bit of the problems. I'm not sure if there's anybody else has any questions or ideas that they would like to talk about before I move on.
Just a thought. I'm just going to put a link here. This is completely random, but it might be useful. So there is this GNCC, which I don't know what it stands for. I forgot now. It's sort of a UK agency, and they have different monitoring standards for different environments. So there might be something relevant there for. I sort of had a look at the freshwater fauna, which is. It's not inland, but there might be something not necessarily applicable to the West Indian Ocean, but there might be some methods there that might give you ideas of how it could be done. If this is completely off the wall, it might not be useful, but it might.
Great, thanks, Paris.
And just another thing that I wanted to mention. So there are lately sort of new cheap cameras coming out, but they're still sort of very high resolution as well. So you don't compromise because they're cheap, but they're not good. For example, I'm just going to put a link to a paper now. So that camera is about $100 US, and it sort of is designed to study deep water environments. So I guess it can be used for shallow water as well. So it always helps because some of these are not commercially available to even like contact some of the authors and ask them if they're happy to sort of provide some of the cameras to test them. I know that usually when a new product sort of is launched, people are really willing to sort of have people test it in the field. So they might sort of be, and I know we have done this, for example, with this particular author. So they have sent us 2 cameras and they're being used in the Seychelles right now as a test case study. So it's, I guess my advice is if you see something, it's always good to contact like the people that have sort of manufactured it and then see if maybe they want to sort of collaborate in some way, and maybe they give you cameras for free, just sort of to see how they work in practice.
Cool, thanks, Paris.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paris. I hadn't actually seen this. It's very cool.
I think that there is a variety of papers coming out lately. Some of them not as cheap as they claim, but still sort of cheaper compared to other methods. And yeah.
So there's a question from Sharan. I don't know if you want to read it out or we can just answer it. So the question is, do you want to read it out, Sharan, or should I just answer?
I can read it out.
Great, thanks.
For a biodiversity assessment of an artificial reef using a monobrow sampling, like, is it possible to incorporate both demersal and pelagic brow setups to sample different depths of the water column in a single study?
Definitely, I think so. There's logistically there's no problem. Like, you'd probably have to have your pelagic browse separate from your benthic browse, and then make, just as long as you adhere to the sampling requirements, so keep your browse 500, 400 meters apart, and try not to, so basically adhere to the sampling protocols, and then interpreting your data, you might need to look at the two data sets separately in different analyses, or you can put them in together in an analysis and just have method type as a covariate or an explanatory variable looking at the patterns. But there's definitely no reason why you can't do it. And it'll probably provide you with really good information based on that question. So looking at the artificial reef, is it attracting pelagic species? So it could provide some really nice insight to what's going on there.
Thank you, Anthony.
Out of interest, where are you doing this work, Sharan?
I'm sorry, I'm from Sri Lanka. So this is, this will be happening in the western coast of Sri Lanka.
Okay, cool. Well, good luck. Hope it goes well.
Thank you.
So if we thinking about, I guess, these standardization and going back to the standard protocols, is the idea is that it's not trying to make one shoe fit all. We understand that that's going to always be the case, but it's just trying to get people to think about standards and apply standards, and where necessary, where it is possible to adopt standards that are widely used. And something to do to work towards that would be to produce some or other type of regional assessments of how standard are our techniques for doing benthic imagery surveys within the Western Indian Ocean. It's something we could look at from a output perspective, and a study that would provide us insight into, like, what is the scope within the Western Indian Ocean to get a base level of standardization. What is the capacity within the Western Indian Ocean countries to implement this type of research and to standardize the data, and then also to be able to publish data based on the FAIR standards. There might be all sorts of hurdles that you've got to jump over from a national perspective in terms of the legalities around publishing data on the status of resources or the status of habitats. So it's maybe as a next step, we could look at doing something like that. Something to think about. I do see there's a question from JJ. I don't know if you would like to just ask it out loud.
Sure. That's not really a question. It was more in lines with discussing how expensive rigs need to be, and the fact that it doesn't necessarily always need to be some massively expensive engineered thing. Because I remember during a previous internship, we were testing out these brand new diving torches for drop camera surveys. I think it was up to 300 meters or beyond 300 meters. I can't quite remember the depth we were doing them at. And it was the first time ever using these cameras, and we sampled the first site and we pulled it up, we checked the footage, and you could see absolutely nothing in the quadrat. It was just completely white, like completely overexposed. And obviously we started panicking because it was like, we're out at sea now, we can't go back to go and get new torches and stuff. So we ended up finding a thick white shopping bag and secured it to the front of the torches with cable ties, and then ended up diffusing the light perfectly. So it's weird how the cheaper solutions can fix some catastrophic design flaws in your rigs and stuff like that. It's quite cool. So I like the fact that it's like you can achieve quite a lot if you're resourceful.
Yeah, it's one of the things you always have to deal with, unexpected challenges. you spend months and months and months planning and buying and developing, and then as soon as you get out into the field, it doesn't work at all. So yeah, it doesn't have to be expensive, and yeah, it's also good. It's kind of like what Charles did with his scaling for his oblique images. It's there's always a solution if you're resourceful and you apply your mind to solving the problem that you're dealing with.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Paris's counter is also very true.
Yeah, sometimes there's nothing you can do. You just get along.
Yeah.
I wonder, JJ, where you're working, if you're willing to share that.
Well, that was a previous internship. I was Tanya helped intern for 2 years.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, from
cool.
2018 to 2020. And it was like our first expedition out, and it was my first time learning how to use drop cameras and things like that. So it was like, oh dear, this is an issue. But yeah, it was quite cool.
It's a great solution. I'm gonna remember that.
It worked surprisingly well. We went through like 3 or 4 plastic bags trying to find the one that scattered the light just the way we wanted to. And I think it was some thick Woolworths one that ended up doing the job. But yeah.
I don't know if anybody else, we can chat about any topic if you guys would like to, if there's anything else specific you'd like to talk about.
I think I was just wondering, I don't know if, you know, how many people have input on this, but I'm just wondering if there are any, you know, researchers or students out there that are already using some form of standardized protocol within their countries, or if there's any sense of that from people in this group for the region. I'm just interested to see what's out there. I don't know if anyone can comment on that. Maybe I'm jumping the gun, and it's just so if I am.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I also wonder how many people are doing, I don't think I say how many people are actually doing benthic imagery type research, or if this is something that you're wanting to get into. That would be interesting to hear. So if this is more something that you're looking to start doing, if you are planning on starting to do benthic imagery type research, would there be value in a best practice guideline if we invest effort in developing something along those lines?
Hey guys, my comment is also related to what Charles asked. So we don't have any, we do have a standard for going out and collecting our data, but we don't have anything published in terms of an SOP. So related to that, I wanted to know whether there are any standard templates that you think we should use when writing up our best practice documents, or should it just be in a form that someone else can use, or is there a certain template that we should follow so that we're sure we're ticking all the boxes when writing up these best practice standard operating procedures?
Thanks, Grant. I think an important point here is that there has been so much done that, yeah, I think like maybe Ant is doing, that it's great where we can actually revert to things that are already working and such. So yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, so I've opened up the 2 portals, so the 2 websites. So Ocean Best Practice System, I don't think they have guidelines yet about what a best practice, a complete best practice manual or whatever should include. But there'll be lots of examples within this that you can use. And then the same with these, this Australian Marine Biodiversity Hub. they've got a bunch of really great sampling manuals. So for survey design, how to use multi-beam echo sounders, autonomous underwater vehicles, your benthic probes, your pelagic probes, towed imagery. So there's I think if you use these, for example, as your baseline, you can figure out what you think they've left out and you can add to it. And yeah, I think that's the way. And if you think about the process, like from start to finish, like ideally a best practice manual should cover the minimum required information and direct you to appropriate sources to get you from planning your research to managing your data at the end and publishing your data. So, but again, I think also is important that they're not too long. I have a bad habit of making them a little bit too long, which makes them not so user-friendly. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I get that. There's so much to consider when writing these things up. You don't want to miss anything. So yeah, it's good to follow previous examples.
Yeah. So we've also, so I see Sharon's just said he's using the BRAV guidelines. That they're really great. We use them, and yeah, they provide some really nice information. And these types of things are, and I think that's also where we're getting at with the ideas behind putting a best practice manual for WIO benthic imagery collection and analysis, is that this Australian one was obviously developed for Australians, but it's used around the world, and that's because of that you now have like a global standard in terms of the method. So it automatically means that you've got a level of standardization. So if the resources are available, people who are looking for them will use them, and then you get that standardization, which is great.
And then also related to this, how specific should I be when writing up my operating procedures? So say, for example, I'm using a towed camera and I'm using a certain type of DSLR remote pro camera inside of the housing. Do I write up my guide specific to that camera and the lights that I'm using, or do I try to be more general so that it can be used by the general community?
I think you might want to look at various scales of best practices. So for your specific operation and like a secure and safe operation of your equipment, you probably want to be quite specific and go into how to operate your specific camera and how to operate your specific lights. But if you're producing a document that's meant to be more generally applicable, you might just need to specify what's appropriate in terms of the resolution and dimensions for cameras and what color and brightness of light you want and the angles that they're coming from, for example. You don't need to go into specifically your piece of equipment. I think if you make a general one that goes into the specifics of your equipment, then it might be harder for people to adopt it, whereas they might be more willing to adopt if there's some flexibility in terms of what you're allowed to do. I think you'd have to probably produce 2 documents if you're looking to achieve those. I don't know what the other thoughts are.
And I think I was just something that I was actually wanting to ask, but I think there's a difference here in a way in exactly what you've said, where you have a standard operating procedure and you have a best practice. So it's a little confusing with the terminology, but I think those two actually separate into what you're talking about. So for me, a standard operating procedure would be more about like the operation of a piece of equipment and how you're doing your actual quite specific stuff, whereas maybe there are probably other terms, but like a best practice, I suppose you say best practice for, WIO benthic work, that would be much broader. So I think it does separate out, but maybe it comes down to, or it can come down to just using that terminology slightly differently. I'm not actually sure how people are using the SOP, like a standard operating procedure, as a term, but that's, as you guys were speaking, that was kind of my thought. So yeah, I don't know if anyone has experience with what they've done with those terms, or if they've broken things up like that.
I think that is kind of it. So we've got our SOPs, but I wouldn't share them with people because they're a bit overboard, or I would if they wanted, but I would share it with a disclaimer that there's a lot of very specific information that's for us and the way we do things, and there's flexibility. You don't have to do it the way we do things to adhere to the best practices still. So I think that is exactly it. I don't know if there's anything else that anybody else would like to ask. But I also think we're almost at the end of our session. It's 10:30 now, eh? Is that correct, Paris?
That is correct. I was just going to say, I just see that there are still people in the other rooms, but presumably we've increased the numbers. So some of them left, and everyone who leaves a breakout room joins this one essentially.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, between now and the next 30 minutes, there is a break planned.
Great. So I don't know if anybody else would like to ask anything, say anything, but if not, we've got a tea break, and then we'll rejoin at 11.
And there's a comment from Layla. Layla, do you want to unmute?
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, even though it would be time consuming, could you not write up the SOP for both general and specific, yeah, depending on what cameras you might be using. But I guess you guys basically covered that.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for sharing, guys.
Pleasure. Yeah, I think you would need to do that. So within your own group, you would have your specifics, and then if we wanting to try and provide a resource that's more generally applicable, we would need to then make it more general and share it amongst multiple people to contribute to it, and then yeah, take it from there. But so it would be two pieces of work, but they both could contribute to each other, which is great. It's worth it.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Thanks so much, Anne.
Great, thanks guys. Hope this was informative or useful.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Ant. And Paris. Is Paris there?
Hi, yes, I think.
Hi. I'm assuming that everyone's going to meet back in this room now. I'm hoping no one leaves the
So I think in 45 seconds they will probably join, because all the breakout rooms will close, and I'll let everyone know that for the next half an hour we have a break.
As a tea break.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Cool. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Paris.
Thank you.
Yeah, Paris, I think everyone's back now.
Are they? Okay, I thought they were still, because I can see some numbers in the rooms. Yes, so hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed your sessions. We do have a break now for 30 minutes, so you can either choose to stay, or if you hop off, then just use the same link that you used this morning to be back here in 25 now minutes, not 30, to discuss, to summarize the findings from each of the sessions. So see you all soon. Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your break. Did give you a chance to get some coffee. Please do fill in the poll if you haven't done so. And I think, yeah, I hope you enjoyed your sessions. I've certainly enjoyed mine. I was in main breakout room 1, where we discussed some of the best guidelines to collect data and analyze them. So what we're going to do in this next hour is each one of the session of the breakout room sort of leads is going to summarize some of those results, a maximum of 50 minutes for each one. But it can be less if there isn't that much to say. So we will start with the first one, main room 1 for the best practices, and Anthony's the one who's going to be summarizing some of those results.
Thanks, Paris. Yeah, thanks everyone. Yeah, so our discussion was on, as Paris mentioned, was on the guidelines and best practices, and we covered a few different aspects. From your own research, from the scale of your own research project to bigger research projects and bigger objectives of your data. There was agreed need that we need to put a bit more effort into figuring out or providing data that can inform people using benthic imagery research on how best to design their sampling strategies in terms of how many images they should select and the number of points they use to interpret the biodiversity data in those images. But then at the same time, there was quite a bit of discussion around how there won't be one size fits all for this type of information, and it'll be on a case-by-case basis. For example, if you're working in an environment that's considerably more variable than the environment where the studies were carried out to work out how many images you need, you probably will undersample the marine environment, or to put it differently, is the greater the variability in the benthic environment, the more samples you'll need to describe the diversity there. So it's while there's a recognized need for developing these guidelines, at the same time that you've got to be careful in terms of how you adopt them. So the person, yeah, basically. Then there was a little bit of discussion around how the standards, best practices and standards need to be flexible to accommodate research groups and people with different access to resources, and in terms of basically the guidelines and the methods need to ensure that the options are cost effective and logistically possible. So if you're wanting a broad adoption of a suite of guidelines for benthic imagery research, you can't have this focused on expensive technologies or technologies that require large ships and that type of stuff. They need to be broadly applicable, and there needs to be some scope for variation within it. So I think a photo quadrat, for example, is a really nice example. A photo quadrat's a really nice example that you can collect it with scuba divers, you can collect it free diving, you can collect it with a drop camera off a ship, or with an ROV, for example. So like that type of flexibility allows you to collect a standard sample from the marine environment, and it makes it open to numerous research groups. And then there was a little bit of discussion around distinguishing between standard operating protocols and best practices. So within a research group, you'll more than likely need to have your own standard operating procedures for your piece of research equipment, and these will be very detailed and very specific to the equipment that you have. So it'll be the camera types, the light types, how to use your housings, and those types of information. Whereas the guidelines and the best practices, on the other hand, will be much more general and provide a broad overview of what is the range of the cameras that would be appropriate for collecting benthic images, for example, not the specific camera with its specific resolution. And then that was about it. We spoke a little bit about working in highly turbid environments. I'm not sure if Baker's here anymore, but and trying to overcome the challenges of working in turbid water. And I couldn't remember the name of the equipment during the discussion, but there's this thing called a freshwater lens camera, where you basically have your underwater camera housing, and you stick a cone, I guess, that contains clean fresh water on the front of that housing, and then you lower that down close to the sea floor, and basically it removes all the dirty water in between the camera and the bottom, so you only have a small layer of turbid water at the bottom, and this can help you overcome turbid or using imagery-based turbid. You can use it for browsers as well, but I think it's probably really suited for benthic imagery. And yeah, that was about it. So yeah, a little bit shorter than the 15 minutes I was given, but you know, I'm not sure if anybody else wants to add from that.
I don't have to add anything. I don't know if Charles wants to add anything from that discussion. Don't have to, Charles.
No, thanks very much, Anton. I think you did a good job of summing that all up and just reminding us of what was discussed. And yeah, I've just checked out that clear liquid optical chamber. It's actually really cool. That looks like something to keep in mind. But yeah, I don't really have anything specific to add at the moment in summary, but yeah, I'm sure that we'll carry on with any further questions or whatever.
That's great. Cool. So let's move then to the next session, which was dealing with data challenges, which was led by Luther. Hi, Luther.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so the bulk of our session was actually addressing some questions in Beagle, and it was more about using the more advanced features within Beagle, such as Maya, and also just getting clarification of the capabilities of Maya and what it actually does. And like one of the main things that came out of there is that Maya is used to detect objects. So if you want to incorporate machine learning and AI into your image analyses, it would work better in deeper environments where there are fewer organisms. And then just how it works is that it's possible for the software to then detect images automatically, so images or objects of interest, and then after that you then assign a name or annotation to that image, but it also still incorporates a lot of manual annotation, and this is to train the program to make better detections and in the future. And then we also touched on the possibility of scaling up the annotation process, because one of the major issues that we have is that we have all this video and image data, but we've only been able to analyze a very small proportion of the data. In my case, it's 18% of what I collected in the entire project, and I was told that there are other organizations and institutions that actually analyze a much smaller proportion of a data set before moving on to the next thing, because there's always a new project collecting new data, and then often the older images and videos fall to the wayside. And then we also just spoke about increasing or just touched on increasing capacity by trying to figure out maybe sometime in the future to incorporate citizen science into this, so that we can have them perform very simple tasks in the image classification process. But yeah, that's it. And then there were a few more direct questions on features within Beagle, but Martin and Tim gave their inputs on it. I don't know if the two of you, if you are in the room, Martin and Tim, if you have anything else to add to that.
Sorry, I just re-entered. I'm just I just heard your question, and sorry, I didn't follow the discussion before. Sorry.
Yeah, so I just
what was
gave
the question?
Of what, so I just gave an overview of what we discussed during our session, and I was just wanting to know if there's any highlights that you would like to point out. We don't have much time for this, but yeah. So I spoke about the more advanced features in Beagle, such as WIO and object detection. Most of the things I touched on already, and then scaling up the annotation process by having more annotations so that the process is easier. The more annotations you make to the images, or as you build up your collection of annotations and images.
Yeah. I think we talked about different things in the breakout room, and I gave some kind of background information about the development in computer vision, and from my point of view, the necessity of increasing the integration of computer science research and computer science development in marine biology or marine image analysis. And for us, it is one very important future direction of Beagle. I think it's not the only one, is to develop new ways how to integrate AI algorithms in marine image understanding or annotation. And it will not be that easy that we fully automate an entire evaluation process, but I think with focused and customized AI applications and tools, I think we can definitely increase the efficiency. And just to use a quote of you, Luther, so to save you from boredom, annotating all these images and videos. But I think there's still a way to go. I think we all together have not really fully understand how we can use AI in marine image annotation. And one big difference too, and this is the last thing I want to say, one big difference between these marine image applications of AI and other applications is that it's much more difficult to get training data, because annotating the data cannot be done by everyone. Like, for instance, annotating cars or bicycles or motorcycles in videos from traffic scenes or something that are used to train machine learning algorithms. And in your case, we need much more background knowledge. And some of your creatures of interest are so rare that you only have a few observations. And when they are moving around and they are non-sessile, they are so difficult to describe with a low number of examples that you can discriminate this kind of octopus from another kind of octopus. So it's still a way to go, I think, but it's definitely very interesting, and I think promising to go this, because we will always have too many images and too many videos and not enough time.
I'm guessing, just a question on that, like, if we wanted to help speed up the whole sort of automation of imagery analysis, what can we do as sort of scientists? Is it sort of making your data publicly available, or like collaborate with someone that works on machine learning? Because I think everyone wants to sort of move this forward, but people don't know how.
Yeah. There are different ways of doing that. I mean, there are, for instance, some colleagues in the US who create a website called FathomNet.
Oh, yes.
I think it's the name. And there you can put your annotated image data. And if somebody from machine learning is looking for a cool underwater image data or video data set, the person can take this data and make some experience with machine learning. And by chance, they come up with a great solution for you. But this is a very distant way of moving forward, I would say. Well, there are different things we need to move on. First of all, we need annotated data. Then, like someone from our breakout session mentioned at the end, it's also important to standardize data. For instance, the information that comes with the data must be somehow standardized, and standardized catalogs should be used, like for instance, a Katami scheme to annotate data, which is what is also important, but it's very difficult to achieve, that you standardize ways how you acquire the data. I mean, when you take a different ROV or different AUV in a different camera, and you have different environmental conditions each time you are recording in the environment, you will have problems in automatically annotating the data, because it's more difficult to the machine learning system to render a visual concept for the objects of interest. Yeah, I think it's very important that we come close together and share our knowledge, like on workshops like this one, and develop strategies how we can combine research in computer science and research in marine biology, and how we can set up multinational programs and interactions, and how do we come up with standards and common goals. As a pure machine learning researcher, a pure marine learning researcher would say, oh, just give us enough data. But I think it's much more difficult than that.
Yeah, I can imagine, because these discussions have been going on for the last couple of years, but you know, there's still a long way to go. One thing, and I'm gonna go to Tufik next because he has his hands raised, but before that, just a comment from me that I think we also have to sort of come into terms that, you know, machine learning, the automated analysis, once it will start working, it won't be straight away with analyzing the whole of the community, and we have just sort of have to deal with it. Maybe as ecologists, we maybe don't want to necessarily go to species level. Maybe we don't need to go to species level identifications. Maybe we can use functional groups instead, which a lot of people are doing now because it's a bit easier. I guess Katami sort of follows that sort of pathway in a way, and maybe that's more cost effective, and it sort of provides the same results. I know species level identifications are important in some occasions, but maybe they're not necessary. This is just a thought. Tufik, you can, yeah.
Thanks, Tom. I was just wondering now as well in that, you know, what if we, you know, if it's actually feasible to get a couple of students to actually look into some of these aspects of artificial learning as well. I mean, there are data sets, and it would be nice for students to actually look at some of these data sets and come up with some sort of a solution as well. I mean, we'll probably never get to species level, like Paris has said now as well. But in terms of morphospecies, definitely. One of the other things is that a colleague of mine, Sven Kerworth, who's sitting with the fisheries department, we were thinking of actually writing a funding application to actually bring AI into you know, the video footages that we've got as well, and see how we can actually, you know, speed up the process. But I mean, we finally understood that it's not that easy to actually bring the AI portion into machine learning, especially for the work that we're doing as well. But maybe, hopefully, you know, now that you guys are here, we can actually start talking and come up with a set plan as well. And I actually like what you said in terms of, that we can actually, you know, take this group and have more workshops as well in terms of how we can actually bring, you know, the whole portion of AI into the video footage analysis as well. But the question is that, you know, Paris, Charles, Tim, what do you think of actually bringing in students to look at that particular aspect of the video footage? Thanks.
I mean, I'm just going to give my 2 cents. I guess it's a good way of trying to analyze some of the sort of data that has been analyzed. I think Luther mentioned that about 18 or 20% has been analyzed. So there is a lot of data definitely sort of out there that could be annotated. It requires a lot of sort of some sort of system framework in place, I guess, to sort of streamline the process. I see Anthony has raised his hand. Maybe he has some ideas of how to do that.
Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say it's definitely like there's a lot of work going on around the world on this topic. We're speaking to Jim Seeger, who manages the CGIS software, and he was saying he's got numerous groups working on automation problems, but that I don't think we shouldn't be doing it ourselves and getting going with it. Like from WIO, we'll start developing the training data sets needed for our biota, because that's going to be a huge task on its own, is setting up these training data sets. So yeah, the sooner we get people working on it, the better. We have someone working on the fish data, so from NMU, from the Brovs, but again, alone, I don't see like an end. I don't see us coming up with a solution to it within the time frame of a project. Like maybe some advancements, which would be great, but it's so complicated in terms of like, well, especially with the Brovs, like tracking the fish. It's not just identifying it; you've got to track and follow individuals through the video. So there's all sorts of things to consider, and then I think the way we interpret the videos is we look at behavior, not just what the fish looks like. We look at behavior. We take into account distribution patterns and everything when we classify a species. So I think it's all definitely achievable. If we can do it, a machine can do it, but it's just providing that data that it needs to be able to do it. So yeah, building on those training data sets, getting the process started, it's all essential steps. I was going to add to that is, I know Event Measure now, instead of like normally when you annotate the video as an event measure, you just put a point on the fish, but now it's got the function where you can draw bounding boxes and those types of things around the fish that you identify and count. And that is all just to allow you to start building up your reference libraries for the species identification. And something you should probably start doing, and everyone who's using Event Measure should start doing, just to do that. Thanks.
I guess one question sort of addressed to all, and then we'll move on to the next sort of breakout room sort of summary is, you know, like this is a sort of discussion that has started during this workshop, but is there sort of a plan or maybe like some sort of online platform for people to connect, you know, from the WIO region interested in these sort of topics going forward? Maybe there is already such platform available and I'm not aware of it, but do you think it will be a useful output? This just really goes out to everyone, really. It's not a specific person that has to reply, but
I don't know of a platform either, but I'm not very much in the loop. So I think it'll be an excellent thing to do. And link in with beyond, maybe bring in people from beyond the WIO. Like the Australians are doing a huge amount of work on this as well. So.
Oh, can I just come into this? I see there's a question by Layla regarding, and I don't know whether it's the same question that was just asked by Paris as well. Now, if you look at the IIOE2 structure, there was different. They had 4 different hubs in terms of oceanographic data, biology data, where science will happen, blah, 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 whatever as well. And South Africa was highlighted as one of the hubs to actually keep some of the data as well. For some of the cruises that we've done. But in South Africa, we've got what we call OSIMs and MIMS. And MIMS is a marine information data set that is actually being held by the department. And that platform is actually growing and growing even more as well. So maybe it is that particular platform that can actually open up, you know, to either share the data. We can actually share data from that platform, but also to house some of the data as well. And then we can actually make linkages with institutions of the Western Ocean as well. We've got the linkages already with the Benguela Current Commission, but it's just opening the linkages with the Western Ocean. So we've got there's infrastructure, but we just need to be able to use that infrastructure as well. But the other thing is that then there's also WIO itself as well. That can actually be a portal to house data for the Western Indian Ocean region as well. But then WIO actually needs an infrastructure, but you need a institution and a country to actually build that infrastructure. Now, South Africa has done that already. Thanks. I hope that answers your question, Leila.
Yeah, I guess food for thought on how to move this forward. We don't have, but yes, I was thinking of WIOMs as well, because there are all these different sort of groups. One specifically, for example, working on marine protected areas. Maybe there could be one specifically focusing on marine imaging. These are just all of ideas.
Paris, there's one question there in the thingy from Sher. And Sher's asking whether, you know, the Katami classification can be used for the west coast of South Africa as well. The quick answer to that is yes, Katami can be used all over, Sher. It's just that you've just got to make sure that you've got the stuff for the west coast in the classification as well. Thanks.
Great. Cool. Let's move on to the next breakout room then. So relating to infrastructure and collaborations. So a summary by Loreen, Marco, or Ahmed, maybe? Any of the three?
Hi, Paris. So
Hi.
Lorraine here.
Yeah.
Yes, so in our breakout room, we focused on feasibility of having a drop camera system designed, and we also touched on infrastructure requirements. And so in a nutshell, we covered 2 inexpensive system designs, and we just spoke about that. And around that, we discussed the limitations and the requirements of these systems. We also touch on expensive versus inexpensive camera systems and the fact that both can collect data. But the issue is that one faces limitations such as depth and light sensitivity. And then in the other discussions, we had Marco also speaking about collaboration and what was done in the past, such as the WIO cruises, for example, and what future possibilities there are for moving forward. And Taufik also just touched on this regarding students, for example. And yeah, we summed up that, and that's our summary.
So I guess because you mentioned sort of like, there is a poll, by the way, that you're welcome to. Already people are doing it, but I guess, Lorraine, maybe you can mention some of those sort of examples of cheaper technology to the rest of the team, where some obvious ones that were sort of like cost effective, but at the same time were doing the job, because we mentioned some as well, but curious to see what came up.
Yes. So for example, we had like a case study of Bergsoff et al. 2017, and it was titled How to Build a Low-Cost Underwater Camera Housing for Aquatic Research. And that one focused on a basic housing design and also a basic frame design. So one that you can adapt if you're wanting to change it to a photo quadrant, for example, versus a baited trap camera system. So that's the one that we focused on. And the other one is the drop camera system that we used on the WIO cruises, which is also an inexpensive design, and looked at the most expensive parts of it, which would probably be your housings, your cameras, and your torches. And looking further into it, being that if you're wanting something going deeper, of course, you're going to pay more, it's going to cost more. And yeah, summing it up from there, that although we have these expensive systems and an inexpensive system can also do the same job. And we do have limitations, but we just need to work around these limitations.
And I guess one of the things that I'm so struggling is if I want to use some sort of low-cost technology, like how do I go about it? Like, what would your advice be? Again, sort of putting you on the spot, Lorraine. Like, you know, you mentioned these examples, but how would you go about of making sure that you incorporate them into your survey? Who do you contact in these cases? Because in many cases, you know about these systems, but there is no one necessarily sort of to contact about them, if that makes sense.
Yes, I'm with you, Paris. Yeah, so that's why it was so interesting for me, the specific topic, and discussing the feasibility about it, and coming back to the case study that I just mentioned, coming across it, it was very interesting because, I mean, the way that they went about building it, all the things that you need, you can source from a general hardware store and an electronics store. And that's as simple as it is, basically. But also what's nice about it is that they also give specs as to the sizes of the PVCs that you're using, the size of the screws, the types of adhesives, and how to put it together. Yep.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. I think, Tufik, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Paris. If I understood the question correctly as well, yeah, I think it's really cheap to actually build the device. Where the actual cost actually comes in is the lens of the device. So the deeper you go, the thicker the lens and the curve, the more expensive that thing will become to actually build as well. And that is what that was told to us by the partners that we working with to build the ski monkey and the jump cameras and stuff and whatever as well. And it depends in terms of, you know, what depth you actually want to go. Before you actually make the decision in terms of the lens that you actually want that sits on the outside of the dome or whatever as well, to actually either reduce your cost or to specify the area that you're actually going to work in as well. Because, I mean, many of us don't have the money to actually go and put the lens down to about 2,000 meters. But then on the other hand as well, you can actually have the smaller frames with another dome. I mean, there's a camera system that was built by Nat Geo, I think, as well, that goes down to 6,000 meters. And it's a small little thing, you know, it's probably not very expensive.
Do you mean the drop cam, which is like sort of a huggable size?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, you can hug it almost, yeah.
Yeah, you know, yeah. And it's a smaller device that can go down to 6,000 meters, you know, so it just depends in terms of, you know, what you want to do in terms of the lens sizes and stuff and whatever as well. Thanks.
True. But I guess in cases like the ones that you mentioned, it means that you already sort of have access to a lot of engineers and people that can help you build it. Even if it's cheap, they can help you. What happens if you don't have that opportunity? If you have sort of more limited sort of resources and you don't have maybe that expertise in your institute, is the best way forward to contact people that maybe like have developed that technology and ask them if you can use it as well, maybe share it, or it's a pretty basic question, but I guess many people don't necessarily have the expertise necessary. I don't have it, for example, to build something like that is cheap. So it's not an issue of, it's how to even start going about it, I guess. Although the example from the drop cam developed by Nat Geo, I know that, for example, this is a good case where you just contact them and they're usually pretty happy to collaborate with people from different parts of the world, and they usually leave the drop cam and you know, after the end of the project, they just, you know, you get to keep the drop cam, which is good, I guess. Perhaps it would be good to mention some of those engineering companies' names here. Well, I'm not aware of any, I have to admit, so I don't know if anyone knows any of those. But
Yeah, here in South Africa, we've got our companies that we're actually working with that actually build either the frames, and then they have the electronic people as well that actually does all the electronic stuff. And the good thing about the systems that we're building here as well is that the experiences that the guys actually have here in South Africa is that they actually building these camera systems for NOAA and for all these other international companies as well. So basically we're getting the same type of system, you know, that those institutions are actually working with as well.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Ant, I think you had your hand raised, now it's gone, so maybe you're fine. Or...
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of we're always happy to give guidelines, guidance, and provide information to anybody who's wanting to build their own camera systems. We also a platform, an infrastructure platform, so we provide equipment to people to do research as well. This is mostly obviously within South Africa, but we do have cases where we do provide equipment and expertise to people in the WIO. So it's, yeah, I think it's just, you got to reach out. If you're needing assistance, there is a community, and they are always willing to, from my experience, people are always willing to assist and give guidance.
Yeah, good advice. Reach out, definitely. People are more than happy to help usually in those sort of cases. We're a small community and people sort of, you know, like to help. So let's move on to the next session, which was led by Tufik. So Tufik, you already your camera on. Can you give us a summary of what you discussed?
This was actually the fun session. It was an open session where we can just like say or talk about anything. I mean, we ended up speaking firstly about sea snakes, you know, and how we can actually use imagery to capture behavior or where they are, you know, around South African coastline. And then, you know, the conversation then moved towards, you know, the image software as well, and how important image software is for, you know, the video footages that we're using as well. And this was one of the questions that was posed by Tim. And I mean, the discussion around that is that, you know what, it's fairly integral to the videos that we do have as well, that we've got, you know, good annotated image software as well, that we can actually use to actually, you know, cut the time in terms of you spent looking at video footages as well. I mean, you can't spend 10 hours looking at a video. You know, you're gonna go.
You can, but you go crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, so and then, you know, the whole issue around the artificial intelligence portion came in there as well. And I think, you know, from the two other sessions as well, is that, you know, AI is probably one of the areas that we got to really focus on as well, and see how we can actually, you know, bring that part into the annotated software as well. And then citizen science outreach came up as well, especially, you know, the whole issue around iNaturalist. You know, how do we get our work done as scientists out there to the layperson, out there to, you know, the communities, and out there to the funders and all that as well. Because basically, you know, we're taking awesome video footage and images and pictures, but we just leave it in a catalog somewhere, you know, on our desk, on a hard drive. And it's better for us to actually put it out there so that people can see what's happening, you know, in the deeper environments, so that they can actually get that appreciation in terms of why we actually need to conserve these areas and stuff and whatever. So, you know, get this particular backing behind us. And then, you know, one of the other topics that came up was by you know, one of our conservationists as well, which is Kyle. And you know, how do we actually choose priority areas when we actually go out there and sample? You know, as different institutions, you know, we've got different priorities. Shouldn't we all focus on bringing our resources together in terms of, you know, having same priority areas as well, so that we can maximize on the capacity and maximize on the output in terms of what we've got as well. And then in terms of one of the other issues that actually came up was the use of side scan sonars and multi-beams as well when we actually go and do our work. Because if you take out the ship, you know, it costs a lot of money, and you go into these areas, and where do you start? So it's important that we have these benthic images of multi-beams or side scan sonars, so that we can actually start planning, and that actually reduces cost and whatever as well. But the issues that we've got is that, you know, although there's institutions that actually does it, you know, some of the equipment only goes down to about 300-meter depth in terms of side scan sonar or multi-beam or whatever as well. And we don't have the capacity in South Africa unless we hire a multi-beam to go down to 2,000, 3,000 meters as well. We've got the ship infrastructure. You know, we've got the ships. We've got 3 ships. SIAB got a number of smaller vessels as well. You know, so we've got that platforms. But the only platform that we need is the multi-beams that actually can go deeper and stuff and whatever as well. Maybe Robin or Roxy can maybe add to the discussion as well in terms of what we add in the chatty group.
Hi everybody. Not much to add. I think Tafik covered it all. No, it was very interesting chatting, and I was also just quite inspired that we had someone from a terrestrial background studying snakes that also was, you know, involved in the workshop and wanted to kind of see what the other side does. So yeah, I found that quite inspiring. That's all I really have to add.
Yeah, nothing from me. Thanks, Tafik. I think you've covered it all.
I guess I just want to touch on the things that Tufik mentioned. One, about the automated sort of, that's definitely the way forward. I mean, the thing that I'm definitely sort of struggling is that it's, at the moment, it's so complicated that even if I want to sort of incorporate this into my workflow, it's somehow sort of ends up slowing me down. So I sort of go back to the manual. So this is more like a comment, I guess, until it becomes really easy to use it and it's sort of really robust, but it's in sort of in its infancy at the moment. I don't think many people will definitely sort of like try and pick it up, because it just takes so much time to sort of get your head around like the whole sort of more mechanistic aspects of it and how it works and writing codes and all these things. That I think where it is at this stage, it's going to take a while until we get to the point where we actually use it widely. But we will get there, but I don't know how soon. It's, some people are optimistic, maybe it's going to happen like in 5 years. I think it's going to take more than that. It's just sort of, considering the incredible diversity of life, especially like in the tropics, it's, I mean, I don't know, sometimes humans struggle to differentiate between different sort of encrusting sponges. How can a machine necessarily sort of do that, you know? Sponges are the nightmare in image analysis. And then the other thing about the iNaturalist that you mentioned, I think Zooniverse is another good one. I don't know if you've ever came across it, but they usually have, I'm just going to paste the link, sort of project for citizen scientists, and obviously for sort of simpler tasks like, I don't know, identifying penguins in Antarctica, for example, which is relatively easy for someone to do. But I think there are some sort of marine, purely marine sort of based projects there as well. But moving on to a question that I have, the one thing that you mentioned about sort of trying and sharing infrastructure between the WIO region, how would you go about that? Like, how would that work in practice? I know it's a tricky question, but how would that be possible?
Well, the thing is that from the bottom up, Paris, you know, the experiences that we've got in terms of going from the top down, you're really going to waste your time, eh? Because we're dealing with politics, we're dealing with red tape, you're dealing with so many other issues as well. And the best thing is that, you know, you start building the links with institutions, with individuals with those institutions as well. That's sitting, and you've got the link with, you know, the WIO. And then is that we can actually make the influence there as well. But you need to have your collective in terms of the work that you're doing as well. And that is in terms of the collaboration with institutions and individuals as well within the WIO region. That is my experience, as opposed to going straight to WIO or Nairobi conventions and all these other things and whatever as well. It's just too much red tape involved. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, there is never an easy solution, otherwise it would have been done already.
Yeah.
So I guess if there isn't anything to add, I don't see any raised hands or anyone necessarily wanting to say anything. I think we're just going to more or less wrap up this session and move on to the closing one, to the closing sort of the last part of this workshop. Just before we do that, I'm just going to announce the results of the polls that we did throughout this morning. So the first one was about within your country and institute. And can I share them? Can you see them? Yes. Can you see anything on your screens now? Like the results of the poll? Yes, I guess.
Yes.
Yes, so you can see that in terms of like, which is the major sort of contributing factor sort of inhibiting you from using remote underwater imagery. So the first one was funding, then all of the above was the second most popular one, and then infrastructure was the third one, human capacity, none of the above. And then moving on to the second one, there was 100% agreement that members of the WIO region scientific community should collaborate in order to document and protect the marine biodiversity of the region. And finally, almost 100% in terms of where this discussion was useful. 92% said yes, and 8% undecided. And I think I will hand over to Tufik and Tanya. And I don't know if you want to take a group photo now, or do you want to do that later?
Can we take the group photo now, Paris? That will be later. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think for everyone, turn your cameras on. I don't know who's going to take the group photo. I mean,
how do you go to view mode or something?
Yeah, go to gallery view. I'll take photo on my side. Just give me a few seconds.
That's great.
I'm just waiting for everyone to switch on the cameras.
Don't be shy.
Is my hair looking okay?
It's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll leave you around to coordinate this.
I think, yeah, if no one else is going to switch on the camera, I think we're done. But I got a good photo now, so that's great.
You don't tell us to smile.
Okay, should we do another one?
Yeah, should we do like 3, 2, 1 thingy? I'll let you coordinate this one.
Okay, just give me a second. All right, we're all ready. 3, 2, 1, smile and wave. Okay.
Can we go onto the other screens as well, Brian?
Yeah, there weren't enough cameras on, but I'll check now again.
I think there's 2 and 3 as well there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay, switch on your cameras, guys. Cool. All right, so you ready? 3, 2, 1.
As well.
3, 2, 1, smile, wave. Here we go. Excellent. Got it. Cool, I think we're done. Got them all. Over to you, Tafik.
Hi, can everybody hear me? Yeah?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so Tanya, Tanya gave you the task to do the closing remarks. And I'm just gonna, give some highlights on the various days as well. But just before we actually go there, it's actually quite cold in Cape Town and wet as well. And I just want to say good afternoon or good morning from Cape Town. And I hope that one day some of the participants will actually be able to actually come to Cape Town as well, to come and visit us. I hope that all of you have had a fantastic week while attending this workshop, and that you are safe in your respective countries as well. During these 5 days, all of us have gained new knowledge and an improved competency to use technology to better understand our actual marine environment. We have learned much from the various talks delivered by our amazing presenters, as well as the workshop question sessions, which were delivered by the workshop instructors and presenters who have shared their interesting work with us as well. Once again, on behalf of the local organizing committee, many thanks to each of you for delivering such a critical content so expertly, in the hope that we can collectively and as a region deepen our knowledge about marine benthic research. In closing, I would like to thank all presenters and participants who have joined this workshop from all over the world. I'm confident that all presenters have adequately presented the application of technology to research. I sincerely hope that through the presentations and discussions, all of us can contribute to better understanding of benthic habitats and associated fauna and flora in our own countries and across the region, to the benefit of our communities. Even though this intervention may be small, it is invaluable to the region. And I thank once again the presenters. Some of the highlights from some of the sessions, and these were aired by the session chairs and the presenters. If you look at the introduction and sampling design session, from day one, we learned about the benthic findings of the IIOE2 and the WIO Benthic project, to sampling design and designing an appropriate MPA monitoring plan. Important to note that the sampling design is critical to conducting a successful survey. Consider automation and standardization, the designing of your sampling grid. Different sampling methods are suitable for different objectives as well. Example, diver-based methods might be more suitable for shallow waters. However, drop cams or ROVs might be necessary in remote and deeper environments. We've learned quite a bit of data and how to collect it from the various cruises and in other field expeditions as well. Yeah. And we find that the data that has been collected actually offer valuable opportunities for students to get involved with biodiversity research and taxonomy, and to learn new skills as well. Taxonomy is not a lost discipline, but taxonomy is a discipline that we really need to highlight and take forward. Taxonomy is also one of the highlights in terms of the CBD. So basically, you know, identifying species is an important facet to the work that we're doing as well. It contributes to the knowledge needed to better describe benthic habitats, new species, and ultimately to make these data available for spatial conservation planning and management. If you look at the data collection session on day 2, were shown how to collect data using different benthic camera systems. And these actually range from the expensive ones to the less expensive ones. And this was also highlighted by Lorraine and his group in the chatty sessions that we had today as well. Okay. If you look at the data processing and analysis section, we spoke about various software packages to annotate images, and some of these software packages are even open source as well. And there are a variety of different options to annotate one's data as well. And this depends entirely on in terms of, you know, what you as the user wants from the annotation. And then day 4, we had a whole session about brews and data management. And I think one of the most important aspects around data management is that how important data management is as well. And I would like to thank our Sept team to actually bring out the brews and explain how the brews actually work and what the importance of brews are as well as speaking about the data management as well. One of the other things in terms of the data management is that proper data management helps to safeguard data from unexpected loss or damage as well. So it's data, 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 which is important. Okay. And I think Tanya will probably highlight a bit more in terms of her closing session as well. So while this is the last day of the workshop, we are hopeful we will continue to our collaboration and collaborative research endeavors and capacity building efforts in the region. Please take the time to email Tanya, or please take the time to email us on our Benthic email address, your thoughts on the workshop. We would like to know if you enjoyed the workshop and whether it was fun and informative. Feedback on what worked well and what could be improved would be also appreciated. We are actually eternally grateful to WIO for providing the resources to make this workshop possible, and to all the participating institutions from our region as well as our European partners as well. Finally, I would like to thank all the local committee members for organizing this workshop and ensuring that it proceeded smoothly. I would like to apologize for any inconvenience that you might have experienced during this week. I am certain that you are all eager to start implementing some of the methodologies to the study of benthic environments. So I thank you once again for your participation and wish you all the best for your research and career. Till we meet again, please stay safe and take care. I just want to say one last thing. I just want to say a special thank you to Tanya, who was the principal investigator of this WIO project. She was the one that actually got the funding and to put the virtual workshop together. We were going to have a hands-on workshop, but due to COVID, we had to change. And I would like to thank Tanya for making this, with a drive to making this workshop a success, and also to Ryan and his cohorts for being behind the scenes in terms of the virtual application to make this workshop a success as well. I thank you. Thank you, Paris.
Thanks. I think, Tanya, are you also going to say anything or not?
Paris, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think it's most appropriate if you sort of like close the workshop rather than me.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Sophie. Really was a team effort. A lot of hard work has gone into this workshop. So I'd like to just give a personal thanks of my own to the presenters. The pre-recorded presentations were really time-consuming and hard to do. So a massive thank you for that. The session chairs, Piers, Charles, Alison, Roxy, Ant, and Lauren, for all their time, effort, and dedication. I know it was a bit stressful, but you pulled it off and we're all brilliant. Our French interpreters, Yannick and Bovik, and the others that have joined today. And then from behind the scenes, the people that you have not seen, but are the reason for all of this being possible. To the members of the local organizing committee, Wayne, Liesel, Lorraine, Lisha, Tofik, and Ant. You guys were there from the very start, so a big thank you for this. All those involved in the training videos, Lorraine and Charles and Grant and a team from Array Media and Octopi Africa that we worked closely with to produce these videos over the past few months. It was a great success and one of the products or outcomes from this workshop that we are very pleased with. From demonstrations of a simple drop camera to browse and more advanced benthic camera systems like the Ski Monkey that can now be used to train staff and students on how to conduct remote underwater camera surveys and even standardized methodologies throughout institutes in the Western Indian Ocean. These videos will also now be used in the Ocean Best Practices course and will be available in the YouTube channel created along with the other workshop recordings. Special thanks to my sidekick, fellow facilitator, Robin, you're awesome. The team at SciFest Africa, Nikki, Ryan, and Darren. Ryan, you have been instrumental in the success of this event. A massive thank you to you and your team. Our team of ladies, Elsie and Lisha, that handled all the admin and emails. Again, this would not have been possible without you. A very big thank you. To UWC, where the funds are managed, Mark, Lorne, and Linda. And last but not least, to our support from the Department of Forestry and the Environment. From our directors, Gerard and Ashley, to Lisha, that's in our top predator group, to our
Okay, we've lost Tanya, Paris. I don't know if you want to just finish off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who else to thank, I guess. I think she's live.
Am I there?
Okay, yeah, I think you muted yourself. Yeah.
Am I back?
You are.
You just put my video off because maybe that would help. Can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I was just thanking my team, the Benthic Biodiversity team. So your input, support, and assistance whenever required is much appreciated. And to you, our audience, the wide range of questions made us positive about regional marine science. It's clear that there are researchers, students, and managers grappling with how to do the best and most impactful science. It was great to see so many people attending each session. And even though it would have been better in person, the workshop reached a far wider audience using this format than it would have otherwise. So thank you for taking the time to join us this past week, for your appreciation that you showed for the various presentations. You were all good sports by completing the many polls and just engaging with us. A very big thank you to you all. We hope that you've learned a lot and that you feel inspired to continue working on benthic imagery within your own institutes. We know that there are clear gaps in such research within the Western Indian Ocean, and it is clear that we need to build on this momentum and provide opportunities for interested people to join in on research activities and receive additional support if needed. We are aware that many of you will not have the infrastructure to do this, but we've learned that a lack of resources can instigate collaboration and innovation. So in ending, I hope you will download the recordings to recap on the lessons. We will make this available to you in the form of a YouTube channel. You will also all be receiving certificates of participation as our gratitude to you. And we will email you with all the required links shared during the workshop in due time. It really has been a great pleasure hosting this event. So from us to you, goodbye. Au revoir, and keep in touch with us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Tanya.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Nice meeting everyone.